Good morning, everybody. All spread out and COVID safe. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. I know everybody in here. So as you all know, we are 55 years young, not old, young. And so much has happened here since we have formed this fellowship. But our core values have not changed. We believe that every person matters. Diversity is a gift to be celebrated, as are our different backgrounds, because it makes us who we are and opens us up to new and different conversations. And no matter why you came through here today, and hopefully we'll have a conversation afterwards and have more of a dialogue. But no matter why you came here and why you decided to join, I am so happy that you are with us today. And as you all know, our services reflect different and varied voices every week, and they can be very different from one to the next. But we all hope to touch your heart, your spirit, and your mind in some way. So whoever you are, wherever you are, if we're online, we are glad to have you with us here today. And I'm Mary Ryan. I'm your service presenter. Harley Shell, as usual, is tinkling the ivories. Rick Dusky is going to be handling the tech duties, and Addie Murdoch will be lighting our chalice. Yes, she is. I talked to her already. Chloe, I put her wrong name in here. It was supposed to be Alice, but that's what happened. Sorry, Alice, I blew it for you. And of course, everybody else, I'm sorry, Chloe, I knew that. So everybody is going to join us for coffee hour. Clifford is making some amazing smelling things in the kitchen. So I think it'll be an excellent coffee hour. So now is the time for announcements. If you have any announcements, please come forward and speak. Hi.
As most of you probably already know, Dorothea Hamlin passed away in June, just recently. And this morning I went to pick some of the daylilies that I think she probably planted, but I know we had a beautiful, fun work party around 2007 where we divided them. And we all got to take some home. So these are from my yard, and I think there might even be people here that have some in their yards from the big dividing party. So just a little acknowledgement of Dorothea and all the years she spent working on our gardens here. Thanks.
And I have one announcement. Next Sunday's service is going to be led by Chad. And it's going to be outside in the side yard. So it'll be first, we'll go out there periodically, but it's going to be out there since it's about the bees. And if you look around, you have to be in the back of the room, but the beehive is over there. So we thought it appropriate to be outside when we're talking about bees. Hopefully it does not rain. Any other announcements? Put those phones in worship mode and get all settled as John calls to relax. Now Miss Chloe will come up and she's going to light the chalice. She's an experienced chalice lighter. And our chalice lighting this morning is by the Oberlin, Ohio UU congregation. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also to be welcoming to whomever we meet, and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together. Thank you. Now please stay seated as we sing 123, Spirit of Life. Our opening words this morning are "I've Known Rivers" by Langston Hughes. I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like rivers. There's the muddy, mighty Mississippi up there. And now, next hymn is 131. Love Will Guide Us. Got that right. Spell check doesn't correct you when you actually spell the word and it's the wrong one. But I'm glad you all knew it was sing and not singe. Okay. And now, do we have a children's minute plan this morning? Yes, Miss Valerie has her book. So Valerie, and come on up, and I. The Batman tested it, so it's all good.
Testing, fantastic. Do you guys know our bugs? No? I have such a small group today. So, we have an important holiday coming up, an American holiday coming up in a couple days. Who knows what it is? 4th of July. What do we celebrate on the 4th of July? Hot dogs? I mean, I do. Chloe? Independence. Independence Day. Independence from what? From whom? From the British? Yeah. Okay. So today, because the 4th of July is coming up, I wanted to talk to you guys about one of my personal heroes who lived during that time. She also happened to be a Unitarian. Her name was Abigail Adams. Most people only know her as the wife of John Adams, the second president of the United States. But I know a lot more about her, and I want to share it with you today. Abigail Adams was born in 1744 in Massachusetts. 1744 is almost 300 years ago, so it's been a while. Click. One click. Yes. Abigail Adams is someone that I like so much, I have even cross-stitched her. This is in my house. Okay. Next. Okay. So, she was raised in Massachusetts, and her mom did what most mothers did back then when they had daughters. They taught her to cook and sew and mend things and keep the house and do the laundry and be a good wife and mother someday. And while those things were important to her, she did want to be a wife and a mother. She also wanted to learn a lot more than that. She wanted to go to school like her brother. She wasn't allowed to. But her father had a huge library, and she was allowed to read as many books as she wanted. Her father encouraged that, and he let her listen when important people would come and speak, and she learned lots of things that way. Next. When she was 19, she did meet someone that she wanted to marry. He was very interested in her because he thought it was amazing that she was a woman who liked to read and write letters. They had a correspondence, which means they wrote lots of letters to each other. And when they got married, they settled on his farm, which was pretty close to her parents' house in Massachusetts, near Boston. Okay. But only about a year after they got married, and she had just had her first baby, the British started imposing new taxes on the colonies. Do you guys know what taxes are? What are taxes?
Basically, when the government needs money.
Yeah, when the government, well, takes money from you. When the government wants money from you and you have to pay it. Now, taxes are okay. I mean, governments need taxes. We pay taxes. But one of the things we get from paying taxes is that we have a say. We have a voice in the way our government is run and the decisions that are made for us. Do you think the colonists had a voice? They did not. And with these new taxes, they were very, very unhappy about that. And Abigail's husband, John, a lawyer, started traveling around and speaking to people and speaking out against the British and against these taxes and saying that the American people should have a voice. And Abigail hugely supported this. She really, really believed in independence for all people, including women and slaves, which at the time, not the most popular opinion. But, oh wait, no, go back. Can you? Okay. While her husband was traveling, she was left alone with her young child at the farm. And she had to kind of be a single parent and run the farm by herself. She was nervous about doing that, but she kept the farm afloat and she did a really great job, and she learned a lot about running a farm and keeping the finances together. Okay, next. Okay. One of the other things that she did while she was on the farm, while her husband was traveling around, is that she and the other ladies started boycotting British products. Do you know what boycott means? Henry?
Like homemade goods.
What does boycott mean, Chloe?
It's like they refuse to buy stuff.
It's when you refuse to buy stuff. And so as a result, yes, they made homemade goods. They refused to buy British tea, so they brewed their own tea out of local herbs. They called it Liberty tea, which I think is great. They also spun and wove their own fabric for clothing. In fact, in one of the letters that Abigail wrote to her husband, she said, well, if I didn't do it, the children would be naked. So, next, I think. Yes, okay. So, as you can imagine, the British were not real happy about people boycotting their goods and going around talking about how, oh, we should have a say. They didn't like that. So they sent their soldiers over to keep people in line. And as you can expect, some fighting broke out. It started mostly in the Boston area in Massachusetts. There were a couple battles, and the Americans, the colonists, were being attacked. And as these attacks were happening in Boston, a lot of people wanted to flee the city. They wanted to get the heck out of there, right? Because it was scary and dangerous. And their farm was just outside Boston. It was one of the first places that people would get to when they would run away from the city. And Abigail opened her doors. Anyone who needed could have a bed, could have food. It was a strain, but she felt it was important to do that for people. Do you think you would do that? Would you help people if they needed a place, if they were running away from danger? I think I would too. Also during this time, something that made it even harder, there was a smallpox outbreak. Do you guys know what that is? Well, you know what COVID is, right? kind of like that. It was a dangerous disease. It was bad. Fortunately, Abigail, my hero, was an early believer in vaccination. Now, we didn't have exactly a smallpox vaccine yet at this time, but they did have ways of helping to prevent it. And she signed her whole family up for that. And as a result, they survived. One of her daughters did get really sick, but she got better. Also during this time, oh, yes, one other cool thing that happened during this time. The Continental Army had gotten a shipment of guns, but for some reason, there were no bullets had come with the guns, so they couldn't use them. When she heard about that, she ran around her house gathering up all of the silver and steel. She melted it down, and her kids helped her make bullets. They made bullets and sent them to the Army, which was very grateful, I can imagine. Yeah, right? Okay, next. Okay, so after enough of this fighting, John and some of the other guys, they formed what was called a Continental Congress. And it's complicated, but they all got together and they were coming up with ideas for how can we run our country? We want to make the rules for a new country, right? And she thought, okay, this is important. I need to write to my husband and I need to tell him, you guys are making the rules for a new country. I need you to know that we need to include abolishing slavery and equal rights for women. Please write that down, put it in the rules. Did they do that? No. Her husband wrote back to her and actually said that he couldn't help but laugh when he read that those were her ideas. He said that. It's a terrible thing to say. They mostly had a very happy marriage. From the letters show that they did have a long, happy marriage, but that was not his best moment, I think. She was bitterly disappointed. But despite that, she continued to support independence. She continued to do everything she could until the war was over. Okay, next. So, eventually, as you know, we won, right? Because we're a country now, and that's what we celebrate on the 4th of July. Who was the first president? Yes, George Washington. Do you know who the first vice president was? John Adams, Abigail's husband. Abigail became the first second lady, which is what we call the wife of the vice president. She became the first second lady of the United States. At that time, the capital was in Philadelphia. You guys have been to Philly, right? Yeah, that was the capital of the US at the time. There was no White House. She didn't really like living in the city while her husband was living and working there. She preferred spending most of her time at her family farm. While she was there, she spent plenty of time teaching the servants, who were paid servants, not slaves, to read and write because they weren't allowed to go to school. Next. Okay, this is the last slide. This is another one of my favorite Abigail Adams stories. So, after George Washington had served 8 years, John Adams became the next president. And then she became the first lady, the second first lady. And so I love that she was the first second lady and the second first lady of the United States. Love to say that, and I try not to trip over my tongue when I say it. So, during John Adams' presidency, the White House was built. Mostly. I mean, they didn't quite finish it, but, you know, they decided to move him in and move him down to DC. But Abigail Adams hated it there. The White House was unfinished, it was drafty, it was cold, she wanted to go home, but she did the best she could. You know, it was very important to her to be a good wife and a good mom in addition to fighting for her freedoms. And so she did her absolute best. And one thing that she did, and this is absolutely true, is that she could not find a suitable space outside the White House to hang her family's wet laundry. Yes, even as the first lady, she was doing laundry. Women are amazing. So she chose the East Room, which is one of the largest, if not the largest room in the White House. It was still an unfinished room at that time, and she used the East Room of the White House to hang her family's wet laundry to dry. Can I get a click? Just one click. This is what the East Room looks like today. That's President Biden giving an address in the East Room. It's a very fancy room. But as he stands there addressing the nation, I hope he remembers that once upon a time, a first lady hung her laundry in that room. Okay, because you know what? She did what she had to do. She was a strong lady, she was a smart lady, and she got it done. So, with that, we are going to go to RE. We are going to talk today about our 5th principle, which is each person has a voice. Thank you.
know if I want to follow that. That was really amazing. Now it's time to pay the bills. So I'm going to pass, or John's going to pass the baskets for the welfare of this fellowship, so we keep the lights on and the microphone's going. So thank you very much for your generosity. Okay. Well, I don't know about you, but this last week was not a good one. As she said with our Declaration of Independence, we have not gotten there yet, especially with the Constitution. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men, should say women, they really did mean men, but are created equal. But it seems like in the last few years, some of our rights have been going the wrong way. And instead of granting new ones or affirming that something is a right, even taking them away, and it's depressing as all get out. And the yelling you've been hearing is my historian father screaming from on high that they've got it all wrong. But we mustn't get discouraged. Most people in the country do disagree with most of these decisions. As the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. President Barack Obama amended it just a little when he said, the arc of moral authority, or the arc of the moral universe may bend towards justice, but it doesn't bend on its own. That's where we come in. We have to remember that and take it to heart and make sure that we help bend it towards justice. Now, since I really didn't want to bring you down before my talk, I'm going to read a little bit of this book that I go look at. When I try to do these, I just start going through my library to find out what I want. And I found this book, and I can't remember where, I think I may have bought it in Hannibal. But it's called The Book of General Ignorance. Everything you think you know is wrong. And it's by John Lloyd and John Mitchinson. And I'm looking through stories, and hope you will. At this one, I just thought it was kind of funny, and I hope you do too. All right, what's the word for Napoleon's most humiliating defeat? No, it's rabbits. While Waterloo was no doubt Napoleon's most crushing defeat, it was not his most embarrassing. In 1807, Napoleon was in high spirits, having signed the Peace of Tilsit, a landmark treaty between France, Russia, and Prussia. To celebrate, he suggested the imperial court should enjoy an afternoon's rabbit shooting. It was organized by his trusted chief of staff, Alexander Berthier, who was so keen to impress Napoleon that he bought thousands of rabbits to ensure the imperial court had plenty of game to keep them occupied. The party arrived, the shoot commenced, and the gamekeepers released the quarry. But disaster struck. Berthier had bought tame, not wild rabbits, who mistakenly thought they were about to be fed rather than killed. Rather than fleeing for their life, They spotted a tiny little man in a big hat and mistook him for their keeper, bringing them food. The hungry rabbits stormed toward Napoleon at their top speed of 35 miles an hour. The shooting party, now in a shambolic disarray, could do nothing to stop them. Napoleon was left with no other option but to run, beating the starving animals off with his bare hands. But the rabbits did not relent and drove the emperor back to his carriage while his underlings thrashed vainly at them with horsewhips. According to the contemporary accounts of the fiasco, the Emperor of France sped off in his coach, comprehensively beaten and covered in shame. I would love a picture of that. Don't you wish photography had been invented just a little earlier? So, anyway. So, this morning, I'm going to be talking about what I believe, and hopefully some of you will be too, because otherwise we're going to be really short. I would call this a series of talks, but a series implies it's regularly scheduled. This one happens kind of like, we haven't done one in for a while, and I think we want to have one on what I believe. And it's about what brought us here to the UUFP, or to UUism, and then eventually here, and just what we believe in general. And many members have delivered this talk over the years, and I discovered as many times as I've been up here, one of those people was not me, so hi, I'm here. Although my guess is, based on all the talks over the years, you've got a pretty good idea of what I believe. So here I go. The earth is flat, the election was stolen, and the moon landing was fake. Does anybody believe I believe that? Because if you do, I have work to do. Yet there are people who do believe that. Although I would hazard a guess nobody here is one of those. And it just boggles my mind that there are people that believe every single one of those things. The mother of a girl I went to junior high with did believe the earth was flat, and she was insistent on it. And besides all of the pictures from space that we've seen taken, right? And there's that beautiful blue orb with lots of cloudy skies. Sailors have known it forever, because what have they done? They've sailed around it. And look, if you look up at the sky or the sea at a distance, or on the Great Prairie, out on the plains, you actually can see it. It looks like a curve. And I wish I'd ever gotten to go on Concorde, because it flew high enough that you could see the curvature of the earth. But it's even obvious you're standing on the beach, right? When you go and you look out there. So wouldn't that look straight if the earth was flat? That's me. I'm not going to say anything else about the election, but I do remember the night of the moon landing. We were watching our old black and white zenith with my folks and my sister and my 86-year-old grandmother. And we were all just so excited watching this kind of hazy black and white with the scratchy audio. And then Neil Armstrong was on the moon. And we had Walter Cronkite on, because he is the one you had to listen to for all this stuff. And then afterwards, my dad and I walked outside. It was a gorgeous, clear night, and the moon was full. And we looked up at the moon, and with the line of planes coming in to land at O'Hare, and we're standing there going, there are people up there. There's somebody actually walking around on there right now, looking down. It was incredible. I'd grown up watching Mercury and Gemini launches, and it was just so exciting watching that, and it was so dangerous. But think of that progress in that near short span of my lifetime that we were walking on the moon. And then I thought, my gosh, what about Grandma? She was born on a farm 18 years after the end of the Civil War, and all they had were horses and buggies. And she was entranced and thrilled watching it. Horses and buggies, the men on the moon in her lifetime. And I think most of our grandmothers fell into that. It's amazing. So I have to ask myself, why would anyone doubt that? Why would you want to? And what's the point? It doesn't make any sense. I believe in verifiable facts and logic. Faking something like the moon landing makes no sense whatsoever. The other reason is, as it is with a lot of, but just doubters of truth, it's way too many people to pull it off. And that many people cannot, as we know, keep a secret. Somebody would have told us by now that, oh yeah, you want to see my pictures on set? You know, just didn't happen. I quite literally, oh, sorry, I skipped a paragraph. Religions are known as faiths because they are built on that, faith. Your faith that something is true. We can't know it for a fact. It's not studyable, verifiable, science, anything. We don't know for a fact that the earth was created in 7 days, for example. Some faiths take that quite literally, and they believe it as part of their faith. The earth is only 10,000 years old, give or take, and the dinosaurs were just planted as something sneaky. Again, why? So I simply don't. And UUism allows me to believe that. I can believe whatever I want, you know. Somebody may look at me askance, but I can. It doesn't tell me that I'm right or I'm wrong about anything. It encouraged me and allows me to think for myself, to discover things for myself, to trust the experts, and to question. And I guess I could say, I choose to believe the experts. The people have studied something and know a whole lot more about it than I do. Sort of like picking a surgeon. Do you want the person who graduated from a top-notch medical school, or the one who said, oh, you know, I saw a video of that, I can do it? I believe that accepting the science and the fact that science changes as we learn more and study more, and more becomes available, makes it more believable, not less. This expansion of what we know and learn, it expands the wonder of things. We don't know so much, and we're learning, even with all we know, we're still learning. And the fact that we are here at all in this itty bitty tiny speck in the endless universe is awe-inspiring. It's absolutely amazing. And let's face it, it kind of defies logic a little bit. And maybe it's where the faith comes in. How on earth did we ever get here? Oh, that was bad. There's an exhibit at the Field Museum in Chicago, Natural History in Chicago. And it shows the history of the planet. And you walk in, there's a giant big beam, and it shows the length of the time the Earth has been here. And then it shows, it's this big long, and it shows us, and we're there in about the last 2 inches, so to speak. And it has kind of a news broadcast as you walk through the exhibit that shows the history of the planet from the Big Bang to the primordial ooze till now. It's a scientific explanation of what happened. But you're still kind of left with the question of why, how, what was the instigator? Maybe it's out there and I just don't know. But what was there first? And I'm here to say I have no clue. I wish I had a time machine and I could go back. Not to live there, but to be like a fly on the wall for certain times and just see what the heck was going on. Was there some sort of supernatural cause that got the ball rolling? Or was it just happenstance? As I said, I'm firmly in the beats the heck out of me camp. I'm all about logic. You may say, really? I know you better than that, but I'm all about logic. And there are just some things that cannot be explained by the rational mind. In my family of confirmed atheists, I'm the outlier as an agnostic. I freely admit I do not know one way or the other. My logical brain says there's nothing. But the person who loves wonder of things thinks just maybe there might be something else out there. And it's not just Judeo-Christian beliefs that say there is more. It's throughout history and time and civilizations. The ancient Egyptians buried their dead with everything they'd need in their next life. The Maya believed each person had 3 lives. And they all came apart at different times in different places, but they're all in some way similar. And I'm also open to the idea that this may not be my first life. Because I found a couple of instances that might help explain, or maybe I'm grasping at straws, who knows, to explain why I found a couple of times in history so fascinating. And I've started, and this came to me later. The first would be the Civil War. When I was in high school, in my teens, I thought I couldn't get enough. I read everything, I studied everything about it, and then literally it stopped. It just like, oh, I'm done with that. And the only rationale I could come for that is I was killed. That's when that life stopped as a young person. Maybe I was a soldier, who knows? And then the other one was when my mother and my sister and I went to the Yucatan in 2012. We were first there as a family in 1968, and Mom was first there with my dad in 1952. And to say things have changed between 1968, 1952, and 2012 is amazing. Cancun and Riviera Maya were not there in 1968. And when we went to Chichen in 68, we parked under a tree across from the lady selling cold drinks, and then just wandered around, followed by the security guard, keeping an eye on us. We sat by the sacred cenote and watched a beautiful blue bird on the other side. My dad told his 2 little girls that children being sacrificed and thrown in there was something he used to do. We weren't quite sure of that message, but this time when we went in 2012, there were walls. You had to pay to get in. People were everywhere. Vendors were selling, lining the path. It didn't have the same feeling at all. Then a couple of days later, we went to Coba, a place we'd never been before, a much smaller and not reconstructed city at all. But it's where the stela that had the end of the calendar that had everybody freaking out, that's where it was. So we got to see that. And our guide, Sergio, showed us the remnants of a road between Coba and the other cities. There were roads all throughout southern Mexico and Guatemala and Central America. And it was in the jungle, but you could see it. And while I'm standing there, the jungle wasn't there, it was open, and people were walking on it. And I could see it, and I felt it. So I don't know, even now, when I think of that trip, I think more of just that road, that spot right there, than I do any other thing that we saw. And of course, we went to Tulum, we saw these beautiful places. So why does that stick with me? So in my next life, I'm hoping that I will come back as an archaeologist who can tolerate heat. So I can go down there and explore, because in spite of the fact that all that has been uncovered, there is more left to be found. And it boggles the mind what's there. And then there are all sorts of people who believe in ghosts. Another junior high friend, I had some interesting friends at junior high, didn't I? Said her family had one. And I gotta admit, I thought, I didn't freak out, I was jealous. I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a ghost? An interesting, fun, that didn't want to do you any harm ghost. But there are other things. I believe there are at least 2 times that my father has come to me since he died. Both times were reassuring and comfortable, but my mother never has. And I was telling this to a friend the other day, and their take was because my dad was so young when he died. He was 62, and he wasn't ready yet. He had things left to communicate. Whereas my mom was 91, and she was very ready to go. And I'd say that is as good of an explanation as any. I believe most people are good and want to do the right thing. But I also believe there is evil in this world. And I have met someone I would call truly evil. I even attended their wedding, and it was all my sister and I could do not to object, grab the bride and run. When we told her that years later after the divorce, she said she wished we had, because she would have gladly gone with us. I believe this, we all have this intuition or this feeling sometimes that something isn't off. The problems come when we don't listen to that little voice. And I even know of one scary story where I'm not going to relate this, but where a young boy, listened to his spidey sense and probably saved his and another boy's life. So the very logical me is obviously open to some really illogical thoughts because we have no clue. We really do not know what happens after this life. Nobody knows. It's the greatest mystery of all time. In summary, I believe in logic, what I see with my two very nearsighted eyes, and I also believe the world is made up of more mystery and then wonder than any of us can ever know. So, that's all I have. I left plenty of time on purpose. Really, I did. I could have gone on. On purpose for anybody else to come up and just share a little or comment or share a little bit about what they believe or what they think, or, you know, you could say you've lost your mind. So otherwise we'll have tasty things in the kitchen, but Cliff's still sitting here, so we can't go there yet. So I see people mulling.
I just have a quick thought. I guess I see, a huge difference between what I would like to do and what I do believe. That's it. It's that simple. I can't do anything but believe what I do or I don't. And so I remember when I was young thinking nobody can make me believe that, you know, somebody was telling me something that I couldn't do. I mean, I could pretend that I believe that and maybe socially things would be fine, but they can't make me believe it because I do or I don't. I can't even choose, you know, what I believe. I think.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense when you say, and I think that's where the UUism comes in. Where nobody's saying you have to think this or you have to believe this. It's up to you. Chad?
You inspired my thought, but I think being a parent of young kids is like an interesting challenge in that regard. Because I was brought up in a religious community and our kids were attending a religious school. And they would ask a lot of questions that it was like hard to give politically correct answers to, that, you know, they wouldn't be parroting back in school, because I'm the same way. Like, I cannot be made to believe something I don't believe. I'm very like stubborn in that regard. But my son, specifically Henry J, is the same exact way. And so I have to be like very careful what I say to him, but at the same time, I feel like it's so much more respectful to the kids. And I talk about this sometimes with some of my coworkers, and I really wish they had a comparative religion course at the elementary levels, where elementary schools in public school learn about the plethora of religion, the top 12 religious experiences in the United States or something. And A, it would make them more tolerant, but B, it would make them less susceptible to cold thinking. They would see something come along and they'd be less likely to be swept up in it, because they would say, you know, this isn't grounded in reality, or this isn't grounded in our societal expectations or experience or whatever. So it's really interesting, because I see the way, you know, we have friends who are religious people, and I see how they certain things they tell their kids, you know, but then we have raccoons get into our chickens and I'm like, yeah, man, things die. I don't know, we gotta move on. This is the way of the world, you know, hogs gotta eat, coons gotta eat. But I feel like it's just more respectful to keep them grounded in reality than to, I feel like it's a cop out as an adult to be like, to sell them in mythology, I don't know, personal opinion.
Even my dad would have got along great.
I'm also born in the wrong time period.
I remember going to vacation Bible school. I think it was when we were in North Carolina, but it might have been when we were in Macomb, Illinois. But somewhere, isn't there somebody in the Bible that lives a really, really long time? I can't remember. Okay, well, I was talking to a friend about this. You know, they used to live hundreds of years ago, and we don't live as long. And my dad overheard me, he goes, no, that's not right. And he goes, I said, but that was what they taught us. He said, no, it's just a story.
Yeah.
And that was definitely Macomb, that we were on the sidewalk. So I remember that. But when you were saying learning about other religions at that same nightmare wedding, my mother said she never saw two people come back from a wedding with smoke coming out of their ears. We were so angry. We were talking to one of the other people there, and they were very, conservative. I guess they were born again, I think is what they called themselves. But they said, one of the women said she was totally against prayer in school. And we were shocked. And you know why? She said this, because everybody would get a voice. And I'm like, well, they all do anyway. That's what we thought. We didn't say it to her, but I thought that was fascinating, that everybody else would get equal time. And I was also talking about prayer in school to some people not too long ago, and one person said, oh, she's totally against it. I said, yeah, I am. And you wouldn't like them where I went to school anyway. And she said, why? And I said, why? I said, because they have been in Hebrew. Because in the school system that I was primarily, again, it was majority Jewish. Oh, but there's intolerance everywhere. Israel is so much fun, and you go back, and one of the things I came up, and my mom said, I can't remember if it was the IRA bomb, I can't remember. And I said, I just don't believe in religion. I can't use something that is used as an excuse for killing. And if you go through history, it's been used as an excuse for killing. So the UU, we don't do that. But I wouldn't be here if my mother hadn't sent me. Anybody else?
Yeah, at the risk of being, and I have two thoughts. So, first of all, the comment about the arc of morality actually goes back to Theodore Parker, who was one of us. And his comment, which was from the sermon back in 1853, 10 Sermons of Religion, number 3, look back to the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the world universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches out those little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divide it by conscience. What I can see, I'm sure it bends towards justice. So this I believe. One is that we are a phenomenal way of thinking, a religion, if you want to call it a spirituality, and this is one of our many mentors who has said things that are so profound and are so co-opted by others and kind of lost to their origins, which is really us, the Unitarians or Universalists of all time. And that kind of comment, in spite of the recent Supreme Court decisions, makes me believe in the basics of humanity and morality, that ultimately justice will prevail, as it hopefully will, that sane minds will come to pass, and that, closed minds will be opened, and we will move to a better place. As it says here, we don't know the time. People in religion would say it's God's time. We just say it's gonna be in time, which we can't predict because we are unable to do so. But we know that we understand where we need to be because we, again, are the descendants of people like Theodore Parker or Arius, who was the antithesis of the Trinity. He was the one who said, no, Christ is a very wise man, but he is not co-equal to God. So we go back a long time in terms of being thinking people and contrarian, and I would hope in, way it should be that we will never be co-opted and differ from that point of view.
Mr. Jefferson thought that Unitarianism was so logical that that would be the majority religion by now. You sort of got that a little wrong. So anybody else? All right, now our closing song is 162, Gonna Lay Down My Sword and Shield, or Down by the Riverside. It's got both names. This is the song that I've known, got a record by the gentleman by the name of Roy Hamilton. And my mom and dad bought it years ago, and I've listened to it my whole life. And it is a foot stomper. It is not, the first time we played it in here about 10, 12 years, maybe 15 years ago, they did it a dirge. It's not a dirge. It's okay. So, and I sent Carly the recording, so she knows what we're looking for. So stand up, clap, and so. That last verse is definitely the Union verse, by the way. That's changed for our little book here. So, okay. meander over and, for the chalice? Anybody? Thank you. Okay. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of wisdom, the worth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our hands until we are together again. Thank you, everybody, and let's see what wonderful things are being cooked up in the kitchen.